They say a Maisa with the Chavetz Chaim. It's a famous story that it was a particular day that the Chavetz Chaim was seen standing by the window, and evidently it was like a thunderstorm. It was really, really bad weather out there, and they noticed that whenever there was like a crash of thunder and a bolt of lightning, they noticed the Chavetz Chaim was like whispering something to himself. So whoever it was, one of the Talmidim or whatever, had the courage to go over a little bit closer to find out what the Chavetz Chaim was whispering, and he realized that with every bolt of lightning, every crash of thunder, the Chavetz Chaim was saying to himself, "Was will the Tata?" What is Hashem saying? What does Hashem want? What does Hashem want? It's an important question to ask. We have to ask ourselves, what does Hashem want of us? Generally speaking, so we know the answer. Okay, Shulchan Aruch, Yiddishkeit. But more specific, the Chavetz Chaim knew that too. The Chavetz Chaim knew that generally what Hashem wants is Shabbos and Kashrus and all that. But clearly, a person has to ask, specifically right now, what does Hashem want? What does Hashem want specifically right now? And right now we're holding by like a funny tekuf, a funny time. We just left Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, and in a few days it'll be Sukkot, and we're in this like twilight zone a little bit, bridging the gap between Yom Kippur and Sukkot. And the question is, what's the Tata? What does Hashem want of us right now? What's the Avodah of these few days? On some level, it's obvious that it must be that these days have to be focused on trying to, sort of bring Yom Kippur with us, and at the same time preparing for Sukkot. And if you think about it, in truth, when you think about sort of the mood of Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur versus Sukkot, they're very, very different. Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur is very serious, and there's a certain level of awe, maybe even dread, and things like that a person tries to feel. And then Sukkot, we know, is Man Simcha Seinu, it's a time of simcha and joy. And so the objective of these days is a complicated one, which is to sort of bridge that gap. So the question is, how do you do that? Chazal say something interesting. They point out something about these days. The pasuk describes, we know that Sukkot, for example, is the 15th day of Tishrei, right? But what's interesting is that when the Torah describes Sukkot, it describes it as day number 1. It says Yom Rishon when it describes Sukkot, right? Yom Rishon. So Chazal already pointed out, day number 1, it's day 15. So Chazal say an interesting thing. They say that Yom Rishon is L'cheshbon Avonos, that it's the first day of the new year where you have a chance to do an Aveira. What does that mean? He says because after Yom Kippur, obviously Yom Kippur cleans us out, And by the way, you should know, it doesn't matter what type of Yom Kippur you had. Generally speaking, Yom Kippur does its thing. So after Yom Kippur, a person is generally pretty much clean. And now you have these few days between Yom Kippur and Sukkot. And Chazal say, these days are exceptionally busy. There's a lot to do. You have to go to work, you have to take care of regular things, and you also have to prepare for Yontif. There's simply not enough time to do Averis. And Chazal say that when it comes to Sukkot, that's like number 1. It's the first day where you can sort of have time to relax and maybe do something wrong. So the question is, it's a funny thing that Hashem set it up like that the bridge between Yom Kippur and Sukkot are days where we're kept busy. Days where we're kept busy. Like, what is that? Again, these days are about, bridging Yom Kippur to Sukkot, and they're also days of just a lot of busyness. And the question is, what does that tell us? There's a pasuk, for example, it's a very harsh pasuk when you first hear it, but if you think about it, there's a lot of comfort in it too. The pasuk says, Adam la'amal yulad, that the human being is created and made to work. So it's a little bit harsh, If you think about it, it's a funny thing. Like every human being wants to relax, right? We work in order that we should be able to have menucha, right? Peace, comfort, tranquility. Menucha is a good thing. Shabbos is a day of menucha. It's interesting. Who was the first person to have a name whose root was related to menucha? Noach, right? Noach. So Noach's name, it means comfort, it means peace, tranquility. But it's a funny thing, because if there's ever a human being that had a difficult, laborious life, it was Noach. Right? Not only the physical effort of building the teva, maintaining, dealing with all the animals in there. Chazal already say he barely slept. And then after the whole mabel's over, the psychological, it's hard to imagine, the psychological, turmoil that this man must have been put through after the mabel. So the one person, his whole life is amal, his whole life is effort, and his name means menucha. It's like, what's going on over here? There's something amazing. There are certain tzaddikim that Hashem sent to different generations to sort of bring out certain aspects, certain important qualities of Yiddishkeit. the Lubavitch Rebbe, for example, is Chussi Yigenu Leinu. So he was a big tzaddik. And he accomplished a lot, obviously. One of the most amazing things that, I think, in my humble opinion, that he sort of taught his Chassidim and pushed very often, was that every single person should see themselves and their lives with a sense of mission and purpose. Mission and purpose. See, the truth is, you don't have to be a shliach, you don't have to, quote unquote, like in Kathmandu, right? Chazal already tell us that before each and every one of us came to the world, Hashem took our neshamas and charged us with a mission. There's a general mission. The Tanya says in the Gemara Nida, Mashbi Naisai, that Hashem makes every single one of us take an oath before we get to this world, Tihi Tzadik V'al Tihi Rasha, that we should become big tzaddikim. That's a general mission, okay? It's a pretty broad mission statement. But then in particular, we know, according to the Sfarim, that every single Jew has its particular tafkid, its mission in life to accomplish. And that mission is something that, the Graf, for example, would say, he wrote this in his commentary to Mishle, he said that by the times of the Nevi'im, one of the great tragedies of exile is that we don't have Nevi'im. But Chazal, the Graf said that by the times of the prophets, one of the major functions of the prophet was not to just tell the future. The major function of the prophet was that you would go to the Navi and you would ask him, what is my mission in life? And the Navi would say, well, your thing is mincha, like that's your thing. Your thing is like Mesechus Brachas. Your thing is to be a doctor and to do it well. The Navi would instruct you what your mission is. Now, unfortunately, we don't have Naviim like that. But the reality of us having a mission is 100% true. And in a certain sense, the entire Tekufa, the entire period of Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, is simply to remind us of our mission statement. Like, why does Hashem judge us and take an accounting and all that stuff? What's time to make us miserable? Like he created these creatures and he just likes poking at them like a voodoo doll, putting pins in it. The idea of Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur is that Hashem sort of takes us back to headquarters, you know what I mean, and sort of re-gives our mission. And every single year, even though there's the general mission in life, b'derech klal, but specifically every year Hashem charges each neshama with another specific mission. That this coming year you're going to reveal godliness in these particular ways, in these particular experiences, in these particular talents that you have, and you're charged with your mission. Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur is a time where we go back to the Mishalayach, we go back to the messenger, to the one that sends us, to remind ourselves of the fact that we're here on a mission. Now the Gemara says that when a person sends a messenger, the chazak is the assumption can be made that the messenger is going to be obedient in his mission and he's going to be passionate about his mission. See, when it says in Pasuk Adam La'amal Yula that the human being is created to work, it doesn't just mean to move a big rock from down the hill to up the hill and back and forth. That's torture. Adam La'amal Yula means that every single human being is charged with a divine mission. And every single moment of life, every conversation we have, every interaction we have, every place we find ourselves, that's part of our shlichus. That's part of our mission, and we're always on. Our mission, b'derech klal, is to spread God's light and reveal God's presence in all places. So we're sitting around the table, for example, right now, right? Some of us are just listening or whatever we're doing. Some of us are eating sushi, right? So we think to ourselves, okay, random. There was a tuna swimming somewhere in the Atlantic, whatever it is, and some fishermen got it. V'chulu, a whole maisa, eventually it comes down here. And this is just a random event, like it's lunch. That's no big deal. It's not true. It's part of our shlichus. That specific piece of fish, from the beginning of time, was predestined to be placed in front of you, and now you're given a choice. Are you going to fulfill your mission by making a bracha properly, by eating it for the right reasons, by taking that energy and doing productive things with it? There's a mice they say with the Baal Tanya that I think it was the Baal Tanya that the Baal Tanya was once by his Rebbe, the Mizrach Magid, and there was a young newcomer to the Chevra by the name of Levi Yitzchak Berditchever. So the Maisa goes, I think those were the two. The Maisa goes that Rabbi Yitzchak went to the kitchen, like before Shabbos. He went to the kitchen of the Mizrach Magid, and he saw that the Rebbitzin or whoever was preparing a huge thing of fish, like a filter fish for everyone. So the Rebbitzin closed his eyes and he looked at a particular piece. He didn't know if the Baal Time was watching. He looked at a particular piece and says, "That's my piece." Okay, it's a little bit presumptuous. So Baal Tanya wanted to see if this is going to be true. So he made a simon. He took like a red string, whatever. He put something in that particular piece of fish to see what would happen. So Baal Tanya is sitting by the table Friday night. The Bardishaver is next to him, or if he rows down, whatever it is. And the Baal Tanya is watching as the fish comes out. And he finds his piece and he's tracing it. And that piece that he put the simon on landed by the person next to the Berdevitcher. Not the Berdevitcher, one off. So he's thinking, okay, he's not too bad, right? He's one off. The person, has the plate of fish in front of him, is about to, put his fork in it. They probably didn't use a fork. He's about to pick it up, and he sees, oh, there's a red string on this. He just passes it to the next guy, the Berdevitcher. Right? And a story like that, the Berdevitcher, that's true for every single one of us. That's the shlichus, that's the amal. That's the effort, the work that Hashem sends us to this world to accomplish. It's everything. It's everything. Real tranquility, real peace, real joy is when a person is activated. That's where joy comes from. Noach's name means comfort, and he had a very difficult life. Because true joy and true tranquility comes when you're completely engaged in whatever it is that you're doing. If whatever it is that you're doing, you're fully present and you're emotionally invested and you see it as something that's meaningful and profound and deep, that creates joy. And we usually tend to think of experiences like that only when they're like big events. But that's not true. Every single moment of life is as big as anything else. In the Hasidic Sfarim, for example, there's no talk about let's say, like a big event in life, like getting married, right? So we tend to think of when you go to the grocery store and you buy an apple, like it's not bashert, whatever, it's just an apple. But when we say the word like bashert, right? We usually tend to use that word in terms of getting married. In the Hasidic Sfarim, that's complete nonsense. It's complete nonsense. Whenever you go to the grocery store, you buy an apple, it's as bashert as your wife or husband. It's the same thing. It's the same thing. It's all bashert. It's all exactly it's part of your shlichus. It's part of your shlichus. This is the avoid of these days. These days, which I said is bridging the gap from Yom Kippur to Sukkot. What's the avoid of these days? The avoid of these days is that Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur was a time where we're back to headquarters, and we're given, what's the line from like Mission Impossible? If you choose to accept it or something like that, right? So we something like Mashuk Kazai, right? So assignment, whatever. We're given our mission on Yom Kippur. We might not have the right, we might be able to choose to accept it or not, but that's our mission. On Yom Kippur, we're given a mission. And that mission is going to include every experience we're going to have this year. As big of an experience as it might be, or as small and as insignificant as it might feel. But every experience, every interaction, every moment of this coming year is part of our shlichus. And Yom Kippur, we were charged with that. And our souls on some level was given an awareness of this. And our avodah right now is to take that mission, right, and to live with it. And this is why these days, as I said from Chazal, are days of effort, of working, of constant being busy. Chazal says such a thing, right? Like I said in the beginning, that Sukkot is the first day of the year in terms of being able to just sit back and relax. Until now, it's been very, very hectic, and it's for a reason. Because what does it mean to be active and to be busy and to be always on? That means because your life is meaningful. The most depressing thing in the world is to sit back and have nothing to do. I mean, it's nice. It's nice in the beginning, but we don't know that long term. That's called depression, right? You sit back and do nothing and have nothing and no aspirations. That's the definition of depression, right? What is depression? Depression is the human experience of being like an air conditioner during the winter. That's what depression is, when you're off and there's just nothing happening. That's what it means, depression. But simcha, joy, which is what Sukkot is, where does joy come from? Joy comes from a person who understands that his life is meaningful, every moment is significant and full of depth. That's what joy comes from. And when you take that understanding, that awareness, and you go with it, and you run with it, and every moment is you look at every moment with that confidence and that strength and that sense of purpose, that's simcha, that creates simcha. That creates simcha. That's the avodah of this time right now, of trying as best we can to see ourselves as shluchim, see ourselves as messengers, not to get lost, in the place of our mission, but to go with that confidence and strength to go and accomplish our mission in this place. That's the objective. I'll tell you, Ma'aseh, I don't know what time it is where we're holding with Mincha, but okay. Okay, I'll tell you, Ma'aseh. I mentioned that Chazal, the Tanya that he starts with. So I'll tell you a story about one of the great Chabad Hasidim of all time, Rav Paritcher. You heard of Rav Paritcher? He was one of the Hasidim, one of the greatest Hasidim of the Tzemach Tzedek. You've heard of Tzemach Tzedek, right? The third Rabbi of Lubavitch. So Rav Paritcher, he used to say the following story. He used to say usually around Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur time, but it's apropos for now also. He said like this. He said that he was once, walking late at night. It was late at night in somewhere in the Ukraine, and it was very late at night, and it was during the winter. It was very, very cold, and he happened to be passing by one of the palaces of the Tsar. The Tsar had palaces dotted throughout, the region. He didn't live in all of them. Maybe he would occasion them once in a while, but it was one of his palaces, and he happened to be passing by, and he heard a huge commotion, yelling and screaming. So he goes by to see what's going on, as Rav Hillel was saying, and he notices that there's a young soldier that's mamish being beaten to a bloody pulp by evidently a commanding officer. And it's very, it's a little bit strange. So people are standing around there, so he's trying to figure out, what happened. So throughout the whole commotion and the yelling and screaming, he figures out that this is what happened. This young kid evidently was charged to stand post, to guard the palace. The Tsar probably wasn't even there, but that was his mission, to stand post and to not, to guard it. And evidently what happened was, maybe the kid was there for a long time, I don't know, he fell asleep. Now when he fell asleep like sort of leaning against the wall. He was standing up, and it was so cold, his boots froze to the ground. Okay, so, he's sleeping like that. His feet are meanwhile frozen to the ground. His commanding officer passes by, his mazel. That moment the commanding officer passes by, and he gets he wakes up from that, but he tries to move to stand to attention, and his feet are frozen to the ground. The commanding officer realizes that he fell asleep on the job, and he starts beating him, and that's what was going on. So Rav is standing there, and he says, this is what he would say over. He said that during the whole commotion, he heard something, and it moved him very much, that this young boy was screaming out of pain, and he said to this commanding officer, "Please have compassion on me, Rahmanis. It's so cold. It's so cold. I've been here for 3 days. I fell asleep. I'm freezing." So the commanding officer said like this. He said, and Rav when he said this over, he would always cry. He said, "I was there, 10 years ago, whatever, when you took an oath to serve the Tsar." And he said, that oath that you took 10 years ago should keep you warm to this day. That's what he said. Should keep you warm to this day. And Rav would say that over, and he said, Tanya. It says in the Gemara, we took an oath to serve the King of all kings. And it's true that after that oath, and every Yom Kippur, we renew that vow. Every Yom Kippur, we renew that vow. And then Hashem throws us into a very cold Ukrainian winter, But the objective is, and the avodah of specifically these days, is that oath has to keep us warm. Has to keep us warm. It doesn't mean that we'll always be excited. It doesn't mean we'll always even know what the mission is. Right? What all Hashem wants of us is to try and to put in effort and to always be on guard, do the best we can. And if we find ourselves falling asleep a little bit and our boots get frozen to the ground, okay. We wake ourselves up. And Hashem has much more compassion than that Ukrainian commanding officer, for sure. It's not a problem. That's what we have to do. We have to remind ourselves of that. We have to remind ourselves of that, of how important every moment is. And as something as insignificant as just what particular piece of sushi you grab from the platter, it's of profound significance. It's not a small thing. It's not a small thing. So Hashem should help. We should be able to have that mission. And these days where we find ourselves busy, we should drill it into our heads that that's the tachlis. And the reason why we're so busy is because every moment is significant. And it's chaval, it's a real rachmanis to sit back and do nothing. Because in that moment, that had the potential of becoming infinite, just passes by. So Hashem should help that we should be able to be charged with that. And we should go from Yom Kippur, from that sense of mission, and the effort of these days into Sukkot with the tremendous sense of simcha and joy, and knowing that every single thing that we do is of great significance. You shall have a great rest of the day. Leich b'chaycha chazeh.